Hello, and thank you for joining us today for Frost & Sullivan's latest webinar from our Aerospace Defense and Security Practice. Today's event is titled Global Commercial Drone Outlook, Trends and Technologies That Will Drive Growth. My name is Anna, and I oversee Frost & Sullivan's Growth Innovation and Leadership Briefings. Today's presenter is Mike Blades, VP of Consulting and Research. Mike has over 21 years of military flight experience, along with 7 years of aerospace and defense industry research and consulting. Mike is a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy. He has advanced degrees in aerospace operations and financial management. You can follow Mike on his Twitter and also his LinkedIn pages. With that, I would now like to hand the presentation over to Mike.
All right, gosh, excuse me. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining. Let's see here. I'm going to go to the next slide, and we're going to start talking about exactly what we're going to discuss here, what I'm going to discuss. You'll be able to ask questions, I think, over on the side of the presentation slide here, and when we get to the end, we'll answer as many questions we have time for. So for the focus points, obviously this is a presentation about the commercial UAS market, how we see the market playing out. We'll talk about some estimates, market trends, technology trends, what the regulatory outlook is, and some market predictions. So just some background. These are the most recent report titles we've completed here at Frost & Sullivan regarding commercial UAS. You can see we've done a couple of global commercial UAS market reports, both 2015 and 2017. I just finished a global commercial UAS market outlook for 2019, which this briefing is based on that, and it should be published sometime in the next couple weeks. And you can see all the different areas where we've conducted research with regards to the different verticals, and also some competitive intelligence in different areas with drone box, AI companies, a subset of that, computer vision companies, and also the drone services providers. And we have a full question here. If you wouldn't mind answering this, we're trying to find out of the attendees who would like what they are hoping most to get from this presentation, whether it's the drone market size, the market trends, opportunities for growth in the market, or something else. And I'm not sure exactly how that shows up, but I think I can forward the slide and still have you all answer that poll question at your leisure. Okay, so it skipped right past that introduction slide. Basically, it's just a slide saying we're going to talk about the commercial UAS market forecast now. And so overall, this is what we're seeing, or this is what everybody wants to see, a big hockey stick with all the hype. This is what we're actually seeing, some steady growth, mainly driven by the fact that regulatory agencies are notoriously slow, especially in aviation, and we're seeing more of a consistent growth, pretty much spurred by Part 107 and the addition of regulations that are sort of mirroring that around the world. This is how we see segmentation. So different sub-segments under each of these categories, but there's the delivery by drone, inspections and monitoring, mapping, surveying, aerial photography and video, precision ag, pseudo-satellites, which is pretty much not a market yet, but it will be in the future probably. We think it will be anyways. Most might be more geared towards the military, but there'll be some commercial applications as well, like replacing communication satellites and things of that nature. Also research and training, and then surveillance and disaster response. Obviously, any of those areas on the commercial side would be where companies can make a profit doing any of those applications. Here's poll question 2. So kind of trying to understand of the attendees where people are on this list. If you're either a drone operator, if you provide services, or if you provide something other than services where you either provide hardware or software, or maybe you don't do any of those things and we just select other. So that's our second poll question, just to get an idea of what the attendee makeup is here. So here's our platform market estimate. You can see that's both based on revenue and units. So I included 2017 because 2018 just finished, but This was an estimate developed from a lot of research conducted on actual platform sales and how many companies there are around the world in different areas that have actually registered commercial drones with their different CAAs. So you can see here we have revenues that are increasing steadily through next year, but then we see a jump in 2021. That's, as you can see from the chart highlight below, we think that's about when the beyond visual line of sight rule will be in place, at least in the U.S. And again, probably just like registration, we think the global rules will sort of follow in line. But as you see in 2022, we see that sort of leveling off and that being that jump. Again, it's going to be a slow growth after that. You have a lot of new regulations coming into view or into place in large economies like India and China, but especially in India, not exactly sure how that supply chain is going to work. Are people going to be able to do like what they do here and just go down to Best Buy and buy drones? So there's still very restrictive rules. It's not a ban anymore, which is good, but again, the growth is still going to be slow even after the beyond visual line of sight rule comes into place and gives us that little bump. It could be pushed out to 2022. I really don't think it's going to happen before that bump. So services market estimates. This is a difficult portion of the market to estimate. There's hundreds, maybe thousands of small businesses conducting commercial drone services, anywhere from, companies that take pictures of real estate all the way up to the big, large corporations like Honeywell and GE that are getting into the drone business. And a lot of you online probably know Colin Snow and his company's latest survey in 2018 found out that only 12% of the drone service providers are making $100K each a year. So the revenues aren't high, but there's a lot of them, so it's a very fragmented market. And just from a project I'm working on now, I'm estimating that the top 20 drone services providers in 2018 probably had about 100 million revenues. So that's about the best we can do right now. And if you see reports out there saying what the drone services provider market is globally, it's probably just sort of a guesstimate and some sort of forecasting model used to do that kind of work. So here's some technology trends we're seeing. Autonomy is taking hold. A lot of drones are semi-autonomous now, but we're probably only 2 to 3 years from fully autonomous. We still need some things like automatic see or sense and avoid equipment, some better AI for data processing and for better computer vision for automating those drones, but a lot of companies are working on those types of technologies. Artificial intelligence itself is really you see it everywhere, and it's very, very hype. There's a lot of hype going on at the peak in some markets, but really it's gaining traction fairly rapidly within commercial drone markets because of AI's ability to reduce processing times, to use those algorithms to identify things that need to be seen when the data is collected. Obviously, you need a lot of data in order to make the machine learning algorithms learn, but it's progressing quite nicely, and a lot of companies are really focusing on that so they can have some sort of advantage over their competitors. Swarming and multi-drone ops, so we've all seen the companies like Intel and EHang and that have had those multiple drone demonstrations, like at the Super Bowl, where they're all coordinated flight. VHive system is a little interesting because it uses drones in multiple controllers to work as a swarm to get one certain job done. So instead of one aircraft inspecting one wind turbine, as just an example, you can have 5 aircraft that inspect parts. So it would take 1/5 of the time to do an inspection. I'll expect to see more types of operations like that. So you can get, again, that goes to the next trend we see below, which is minimizing time to data. So if you can get the data collected in 1/5 of the time, then obviously you can minimize that time from when you start collecting to get that final answer to make a decision. But in addition to the swarming, we have advances in the GPS or GNSS receivers, the graphics processing units and video processing units, autonomous capabilities, AI, and also the decreasing prices for RTK and PPK capable drone system in the mapping and surveying area. All these things together are driving down the time it takes to gather and process and analyze data. For market trends, there's a lot going on, and you can see this especially when you talk about the the drone conferences that are becoming popular. There's a lot of interest in vertical or industry-related conferences because there's so many different things that each industry requires that or might be different from another industry with regards to platforms and hardware overall, subsystems like sensors, different software. So obviously, we see this trend mostly in what is allowed for Part 107 because you don't have to get special allowance or special allowances or waivers in order to operate outside of those 107 rules. There's a continued migration to full stack. Most operators don't want to go to 5 or 6 different vendors for each portion of the drone flight. They don't want to have a different software that does fleet management and then collects the data and stores the data and does data analytics. They want this end-to-end software. So companies like Hanger that are putting together those kind of capabilities, and Drone Deploy that offers the app market and things like that. Those are where the trends are going. This one software for each capability is kind of falling off to the wayside. Investing to scale, excuse me. There's been a very noticeable increase in acquisitions and partnerships, especially regarding DSPs. A lot of that sometimes has to do with just purchasing a company that has paying customers, so you can get that cash flow and keep operating until we get more favorable regulations. But all in all, companies have to have that ability to scale their operations. Flying 1 or 2 or 3 drones isn't going to do a whole lot of good for a company that's nationwide or global. You just have to be able to scale those operations. And also medical and rural deliveries. I've probably seen a lot of news articles and reports talking about a lot of areas in Africa, Vanuatu. I actually show a slide later here that talks about what's going on in delivery. But you can see it's not really the consumer goods that's being delivered. It's a life-saving medical treatments or delivering things in rural areas where there's just not any infrastructure to support those kinds of deliveries. Here's a closer look at delivery. Drone Delivery Canada is pretty interesting. They recently received clearance to test a drone that can carry up to 50 pounds, up to 60 miles. They're developing drones specifically for parcel and large package delivery. Iceland is using their AHA company is using Flytrex, which is an Israeli company, to deliver and actually consumer stuff that 2 to 7 miles and is being delivered across waterways. So it's solving a problem that you can get from one place, delivery from one place to another over this obstacle. It's just water. Obviously, one of the most important is those operations from Zipline in Rwanda and Tanzania that's delivering medical supplies, critical medical supplies to people who need it, who wouldn't maybe get them up in time otherwise because of the lack of infrastructure in those countries. Rakuten is starting to deliver parcels. They're in coordinates with JD.com, which shows up again down in China, who's pretty much leading the development of parcel delivery for drones. They're supposed to even be putting in charging stations in rural areas so drones can land, charge, and take off and go further. And there's Swoop Air that I talked about delivering in Vanuatu. The interesting thing about all this is supposed to be built here. Yeah, Amazon's still not delivering to your door like they promised in 2013. So some regulatory outlook information. Europe adopted the Amsterdam Declaration to homogenize drone operating rules throughout the EU. CAA's published more restrictive rules on recreational and commercial drone use, which take effect 1 June. You can read online what the pluses and minuses are about that. It's just interesting. And then obviously the FAA recently put in their NPRMs for beyond visual line of sight and operations over people. I mean, the FAA administrator already said that BVLOS won't happen without the remote ID. So that's even going to take a while for us to figure out what remote ID is going to be and what the requirements for that are. What kind of frequency is going to use, what kind of equipage are you going to have to need to meet remote ID requirements. Saudi Arabia recently opened up registration for their recreational commercial drones. They had a ban previously, and also obviously in a bigger region with a bigger economy, India also lifted their drone ban recently. Their rules are still very restrictive, but they're already working on their 2.0 version of their rules, which is supposed to be more risk-based rather than prescriptive for using commercial drones in a safe environment. So, and some growth opportunities. Basically, we evaluate the markets and we try and help our clients understand where they can look to enter a market or expand within a current market that they're in order to increase their growth. So, first area is AI and machine learning. Talked about that earlier. There's a lot of companies that are trying to increase the capabilities of their software, especially on the data analytics side by using AI. So companies that invest in that and again can reduce that and minimize that time to data. So where you have maybe even the capability of getting this answer at the end is presented to you. Here's the information we gathered. Goes to the executive and it presents them with either a yes or no question, or the answer is either yes or no. It doesn't. The idea is to have the data give you the easiest decision-making process possible for either strategic planning or whatever fits your business model. Advanced sensors, still going to. We started this entire market without any sensors that were specifically made for drones. Now companies are looking at making robust sensors that are required for identifying the drones with remote ID, having see or sense and avoid, which would be required for beyond visual line of sight, and then also collision avoidance, which would be needed for beyond visual line of sight, as well as just having those robust sensors to be able to collect the largest amount of data quicker, and even maybe having some edge processing capabilities embedded with those. Minimizing time to data, I talked about that, but it's also a growth opportunity. So anything that a company can provide in that supply chain from a platform or software perspective that allows us to minimize the time it takes to collect, store, process, and analyze data is a growth opportunity. Drone analytics with a vertical focus. So yes, minimizing time to data is good, but we also want to make sure a lot of companies that are doing very well right now are making sure that they are the best at doing drone data collection, processing, and analytics in a specific industry, whether it's oil and gas, or whether it's precision ag, or whether it's in inspecting wind turbines. Some of those areas have lots of competition, so you want to be the best. You want to have the best data, you want to get it the quickest, and be able to provide those answers all at a reasonable ROI. And we also, there's going to be significant, there are now, but obviously there will be more growth opportunities in systems that increase safety. So ballistic parachutes, so you can fly over people, prop shrouds, ducted propellers, frangible platforms, and or just redundant systems, so redundant communication systems that allow for beyond visual line of sight or just longer distance operations, because you are going to be able to ensure that that C2 connection is made. They also had a real interesting, and if anyone's seen it, that caught my attention, an algorithm, I think the company is called Verify, that if a quad rotor loses one motor or two motors, as long as they're not adjacent to each other, it stabilizes the drone so it can land without just careening into somebody. So that's a very interesting technology that's just software driven that could increase the ability for aircraft to be certified to fly over people, or at least making it a requirement to fly over, to have that capability to fly over crowds. Some market predictions. I've been talking about this for a couple of years, and actually has happened, especially with Airware shutting its doors last year. But there's still more platform makers that aren't going to make it. And I see even some of the transitional drone makers going away soon. I think I had 13 or 14 different companies that came on the market in 2017 that make the transitional drones that take off VTOL and fly like a fixed wing. There's just not enough, I don't think, market demand for all this to survive. I see DSPs, drone services providers, continuing to expand via acquisition and experience to remain competitive. So maybe acquiring some of the smaller companies and getting some of that subject matter expertise, especially if they're companies that work in the same industry, with the same industry focus that the DSP that's acquiring is in. Expect some notable software makers to cease operations as well. Again, there's so many drone management software platforms out there, but there's just not enough work to support them all. Some will go away, some will get acquired. we'll see steady but notable growth. Industry adoption will still grow steadily but significantly. As the actual decision makers in the companies become educated on the real benefits of drones, whether it's a financial benefit or a safety benefit or a time savings benefit or a combination of those. Growth will also be driven by the lifting of commercial drone bans in key countries, as well as just once those drone bans are lifted, going through the same process that we've gone through here in the U.S., where people, our companies are learning how to make drones work for them as a tool. Business is not easy, so they're going to have to learn, just like the businesses we've had here in the U.S. and in Europe, as to how to best make out on their ROI with using drones. AI and edge processing, I think, are two things that are really going to drive growth. AI is going to enable autonomous operations through computer vision, but it's also going to streamline the process for collecting, processing, and analyzing the huge amount of data that comes in through drone sensors. And obviously, as those sensors get better, you're going to have more data. And then that goes to the edge processing point, that as we collect more data, we need to process at the point of collection, because you don't really need to send all that data down a limited data link. Only the data that you really need should go down that data link to be stored and or processed and analyzed through the cloud. I see energy and infrastructure as the industries they're going to see the greatest interest in commercial drones, just because of the great number of applications within those two verticals and the cost savings within it. It's very easy, and it also mentions the safety benefits. Their safety is paramount as well, but it's very easy to justify owning drones to inspect something like a flare stack when you can, or just excuse me, an oil refining facility where you can save millions of dollars in just a few days by not having to shut that plant down in order to do these inspections. The ROI areas, obviously, where ROI is pretty much in your face. It's going to be easy for those industries to adopt drones. The last prediction, there's a promise of 5G delays. 5G is kind of on the same hype train as AI. It's got a lot of potential, but it uses millimeter wave technology, which is about 1/10 of the range. If I'm not mistaken, it's 1/5 or 1/10. I'm sorry, I can't remember. I think it's 1/10 of the range of 4G LTE. So obviously, it's going to take a while for this to become a big deal. It'll be more useful in the urban areas because you can put more antennas around and to mitigate that shorter distance that 5G. But the use of 5G in the future is where you can transfer so much more data at such a higher rate with lower latency than what the current 4G has. There's amazing potential. It's just not going to happen as quickly, I think, as the 5G advocates would want you to think. Some key technologies for the future. This is something we've been adding to our reports lately, just to give people information on some of the things that are sort of on the leading edge and could be market drivers in the future. So the first one is wireless charging. It's interesting. We have the long distance wireless charging with Global Energy Technologies, I think is the name of the company. I can't remember. I should have had it written down in front of me. But if anybody wants to talk about this kind of stuff, they can obviously contact me after the webinar. I'd love to talk about these things. But they also have a company called Wybotic does the short distance, which basically is the wireless charging for when a drone lands on a charging pad and doesn't need a contact, or when it lands in a drone in a box situation where they don't have to have a contact. There's just a wireless charging transmitter and receiver, one on the drone box itself and one on the drone, that allows it to recharge the drone without actually having to make a physical contact. Again, we talked about 5G, and again, it's going to be a very interesting process by which that is implemented. And once 5G is widespread, it's going to have huge implications on drones and how they communicate with each other and how they communicate with other IoT devices. Fuel cells and hybrid propulsion. Battery densities, energy densities are not increasing that quickly. It's about 3 to 5% a year. So if we want to be able to carry things further heavier and longer, and for longer amounts of time, the answer is going to have to be, for quite some time, some sort of fuel cell or a hybrid propulsion. So look to see those technologies pushing some of the demand, especially for drones that are over 55 pounds. Sensor fusion is interesting. If you look at a company called Brash Tech, they fuse EO, IR, electro-optical, and infrared images with LiDAR, so you don't have to overlay them. They do it at the same time. They come up with some very interesting inspection capabilities that you wouldn't have if you were just using one camera or the other, or they weren't aligned to take the data at the same time. And then blockchain, it could provide the means to enable the autonomous drones and their operations to help ensure safe flights and guaranteed transfer of secure data. That's another interesting sort of way out there concept that I don't totally understand, but I'm working very hard to understand it more every day, because you see blockchain described or attempted to be described almost on a daily basis. So some conclusions and takeaways. So the revenue from platform sales is going to level off. The number of platforms required is going to continue to grow as the regulations allow for more commercial operations. The reason being for that, when you see revenues level off, but you see the platforms numbers still growing, the per platform prices are expected to continue to decrease. Expect considerable consolidation in many areas of the ecosystem, probably throughout 2019 and 2020 as this market grows. It kind of transitions from nascent to a growth market, and the companies that aren't doing well will shake out. And so that's going to include mergers and acquisitions, as well as companies just not operating anymore. Expect autonomy, AI, and advanced sensors and changing global regulatory frameworks to drive the market. The regulations are going to have the most effect depending on when or how long it takes them to open up areas like beyond visual line of sight operations over people. There are still several growth opportunities in the ecosystem. It's not closed off to new entrants. But again, we're transitioning from a nascent market to a growth market as a lot of these industries understand more with operations what they need to do, what they need to improve, and how to save money while they're using drones to improve their operations, and just as a tool to make decision making quicker and at a lower cost. So the growth opportunities aren't just limited to software and hardware, but also the subsystems themselves and developing new sensors. All those types of things are going to enable expanded commercial operations to include beyond visual line of sight and operations over people when those regulatory frameworks come together. Okay, that's the end of my presentation. I'll open it up for questions. I hand it over to Anna, and she'll put the questions up, and I'll try to answer as many as I can.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, we have a question here. What was the name of the company providing fused sensors?
Brash Tech, BRASHTECH.
Okay, very well, thank you. And moving to our next question here. When do you think the BVLOS rules will be in place, and why?
Okay, well, obviously those are going to change, or those are going to be in place in different regions at different times. I think the U.S. beyond visual line of sight, obviously the NPRMs now, I think I hinted at it in one of the slides that beyond visual line of sight will probably be somewhere 2021, beginning or end of 2021, maybe into 2022. I don't think it's going to happen next year or two, because again, we have to have remote ID according to the FAA. And the decision has to be made on what does the remote ID going to be made of, what's going to be required. Is it going to be a radio frequency? Is it going to be Wi-Fi? Is it going to be, is it going to be a cell signal that operates in 4G? What's it going to be? And then also, is it going to have any backup systems? So once we figure that out, then we can move on to beyond visual line of sight. But there will also be requirements, I think, for sense and avoid or see and avoid, and a lot of that technology is out there. It's just a matter of how do you set the requirements for what small drones are going to have in order to operate in a low altitude environment without the operator having the drone itself in sight. So I think 2021, 2022, and again, just because of the technology that's going to have to be required to operate out of the sight of folks. And once the folks operating them, once that happens, I think the opportunities are going to be coming from not operating beyond visual line of sight over the horizon, but operating drones off-site through some sort of command post or command center where you don't have to actually be where the drone is in order for it to conduct whatever application is conducting, whether it's an inspection or some sort of security function, whatever that may be.
Thank you. And speaking of drones, which industries do you think will benefit the most from drone use in the future?
Well, the industries that seem to be benefiting most now are mapping and surveying, and you can see a lot of development there with regards to low-cost RTK and low-cost PPK sensors, and just drones themselves being able to operate with the real-time kinematic and the post-processing kinematic abilities to get sub-centimeter resolutions for mapping and surveying with drones that are less than $10,000. That's a massive thing that is driving some of the capabilities now. But I think that in the future, at least until we get beyond visual line of sight for the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to see more and more adoption within the verticals that have the highest ROIs, like oil and gas, energy, anything that has to do with energy. So it can be renewables or inspecting towers that carry high power line. What do they call those? High voltage power lines, and in wind turbine inspections, those kinds of things. I have heard that I've been told there's a lot of competition in the wind turbine inspection market right now. So it's kind of, it might be a little bit of a race to the bottom, but all the companies that are doing that aren't going to be around. So it's probably going to shake out to the best of breed working it out there. But all those verticals in energy and mapping and surveying construction, I think, are the ones that are probably going to be growing in adoption of drones and also expanding their capabilities just based on experience and understanding where their cost savings can come from as they continue to operate on a daily basis.
Thank you, Mike. And I see that we don't have any more questions, but I'd like to go quickly back to our poll results. So we asked our audience on our first poll question, what is the main point you hope to get from this presentation? So we have about 50% indicate drone market trends, 33% indicate the drone market size, and lastly, 16% indicate drone market growth opportunities. Our second poll question, we asked our audience, where do you function in the drone ecosystem? And it's a split. We have half of our audience indicate their drone services provider, and then the other half is other. So these are the results from the 2 poll questions. And then I have a question. One of our members is asking, will the on-demand recording be available? And yes, today's session will be available on demand shortly after we have finished. So I do not see any more questions at this time. So this concludes today's session. Again, as Mike mentioned before, please contact us with any additional questions. I've posted his details on your screen. You can call him or you can send him an email. And you can also visit the Aerospace Defense and Security website. It's listed on your attachments tab, and that will give you a little bit more information about what the program entails. And we want to thank everyone for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day.